a silver mask etched with delicate swirls. When she tied it around her head, the transformation was instant. Alicia, the dependable office girl, disappeared. Aurelia stood in her place. The hum of the air conditioner was the loudest sound in the office that afternoon. The pale walls, lined with framed motivational posters, did little to fight the monotony of another 9-to-5 day. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, washing the space in a sterile glow. At her desk in the middle row, Alicia Johnson typed steadily, her long fingers moving across the keyboard with the quiet precision of someone who had long since perfected the rhythm. She was efficient, dependable, and invisible all at once. Her coworkers often teased her for being too serious. "Loosen up, Alicia," they would say when she declined their offers for happy hour. But Alicia only smiled, polite as always, never explaining where she disappeared to once the clock struck 5. She wore her usual office attire today: a peach blouse, navy trousers that brushed her knees, and sensible flats. Her thick hair was pulled back in a bun, not a strand out of place. At her desk, a framed photo of her younger brother sat beside her computer. It was the only personal touch in her workspace, a quiet reminder of the reason she worked so hard. Their father had passed years ago, and her mother's health wasn't steady. Stability mattered to her family, and Alicia carried that responsibility with grace. Still, there were moments when the phone rang with yet another client complaint, or when her boss dumped a stack of reports on her desk that she wondered if this was all life had planned for her. Back at her desk, she glanced at the clock: 4:57 p.m. Almost time. Her pulse quickened. The anticipation that always stirred around this time of day thrummed inside her. Because while her coworkers packed up to go home, Alicia's day was just beginning. By 5:02 p.m., she was out of the building, the Nassau sun sinking low and streaking the sky in orange and pink. She walked quickly through the streets, her sensible flats replaced in her tote bag with heels. Aurelia was the name she had chosen for herself in her other life. Aurelia was fearless, magnetic, untouchable. She was everything Alicia wasn't allowed to be under the office lights. By the time Alicia reached her small apartment, the sun had already melted into the horizon, leaving streaks of lavender and gold across the Bahamian sky. She shut the door behind her, leaned against it for a brief second, and let out the breath she'd been holding since 5 o'clock. The blouse came off first, then the flats. The navy trouser was folded neatly into her closet because no matter how tired she was, Alicia was meticulous. But as she opened the second wardrobe, hidden behind the first, her secret world spilled out. Sequined bodices in shades of sapphire and ruby. Flowing skirts slit high to reveal long, powerful legs. Silk gloves, glittering heels, feathered fans. And most importantly, the masks. Each one is unique. Each one a shield and a stage. She ran her fingers along the velvet lining until she found her favorite, a silver mask etched with delicate swirls, its edges kissed with sapphire stones. When she tied it around her head, the transformation was instant. Alicia, the dependable office girl, disappeared. Aurelia stood in her place. The car dropped her at Club Solaris, the jewel of Nassau's nightlife. From the outside, it was discreet tinted glass and clean lines. But inside, it was another world entirely. A red carpet lined the entrance, where suited men escorted women draped in diamonds. Music pulsed from within, seductive and alive, like a heartbeat amplified. Aurelia slipped through the backstage entrance. The air here smelled of perfume, hairspray, and anticipation. 5 minutes to showtime, someone called. Aurelia ignored the chaos, adjusting the straps of her midnight blue dress. It shimmered like liquid under the dim backstage light, hugging her curves before spilling into flowing fabric at her thighs. She painted her lips crimson, the final brushstroke of confidence. When she walked out onto the stage, silence fell over the crowd. The chandeliers dimmed. A single spotlight caught her, turning her into something untouchable. The first note of music swelled, low and haunting. And then she moved. Her body bent and stretched with elegance, every flick of her wrist telling a story. The slit in her dress revealed flashes of toned legs as she spun, her skirt catching air like a wave curling onto the shore. The mask hid her face, but her eyes, sharp, glittering, alive, told everything the mask could not. The crowd leaned in as if pulled by invisible strings. Powerful men who closed billion-dollar deals leaned forward like schoolboys. Women in designer gowns raised their glasses, eyes wide with admiration or envy. But Aurelia didn't dance for them. She danced for herself. For the girl who once dreamed of stages bigger than her neighborhood recitals. For the woman who craved freedom, even if only for a few hours each night. When the music reached its crescendo, she leapt into the air, the hem of her skirt flaring like wings, and landed in a graceful arc. The final pose froze her in the spotlight, head tilted, eyes burning. For one suspended moment, silence hung in the room. Then came the eruption: applause, cheers, champagne glasses raised in toast. Men shouted her name. Aurelia! Aurelia! She gave only the slightest bow, her lips curving faintly, before vanishing behind the velvet curtain. Backstage, the other dancers gushed and whispered. She had them eating out of her hand again, one said. She's untouchable, another added. Like a goddess. Alicia slipped off her heels, her chest heaving from the performance. She caught sight of herself in the mirror, sweat glistening, hair tumbling loose, mask still in place. Aurelia stared back at her. She had no idea that across the ocean, a private jet was cutting through the night sky. And on that jet was a man whose presence would shatter her carefully built double life. The engines of the Gulfstream G700 purred to silence as the jet rolled to a smooth stop at Linden Pindeling International Airport. The night sky was a velvet blanket, stitched with stars that reflected in the waves beyond the runway. Inside the cabin, Seo Joon Park sat motionless, his long fingers wrapped around a crystal glass of water he had barely touched. At 32, he was the man magazines liked to call the Golden Wolf of Seoul, a self-made billionaire who had turned his father's modest hotel chain into an empire spanning 3 continents. To the world, he was untouchable. But tonight, as the seatbelt sign dimmed, he felt only exhaustion. Sir, his assistant, Minho, said gently, we've landed. Seo Joon gave a slight nod. His black suit was immaculate despite the 15-hour flight, every line pressed, every detail precise. Perfection had become his armor because when you looked flawless, no one saw the cracks. And Seo Joon had cracks. A year ago, he had been engaged to the daughter of one of Korea's most powerful families. Their wedding had been set to unite 2 empires, celebrated in every business paper. But one rainy afternoon, she had walked away. Not for another billionaire. Not for prestige. For a man who had nothing but a guitar and a heart that made her feel alive. Her last words to Seo Joon had haunted him ever since. You give me everything, Seo Joon, except yourself. He had thrown himself deeper into work, building resorts, casinos, and clubs as if wealth could patch the hollow ache. So when the opportunity came to personally oversee the opening of his new Bahamian resort, he didn't hesitate. He told his board it was a matter of pride. Secretly, he hoped the salt air and the distance might offer something Seoul could not: forgetfulness. The black Rolls-Royce awaited him outside the plane, driver in crisp uniform, engine humming. As they drove through Nassau's lively streets, Seo Joon watched through the tinted glass. Tourists in sundresses laughed as they licked dripping ice creams. A band played steel drums near a plaza, children clapping along. The air was thick with the scent of salt, fried conch, and rum. It was alive. So unlike Seoul's rigid skyscrapers and endless business dinners. Minho cleared his throat beside him. Shall I take you directly to the resort, sir? The management team has prepared a briefing for the morning. Seo Joon's gaze lingered on a strip of neon lights ahead. Music throbbed faintly, carried on the wind from the waterfront. He thought of the heavy silence waiting in his hotel suite. The untouched whiskey bottles. The rehearsed pleasantries. No, he said quietly, surprising even himself. Take me to the club I heard about. Solaris, is it? Minho blinked. Yes, sir. The driver turned, guiding the Rolls toward the glowing jewel of the nightlife district. Seo Joon leaned back, loosening his cufflinks, his mind already calculating, already cautious. He had no idea why he felt drawn to this place tonight. Only that something restless inside him refused to be silenced. The hum of bass pulsed through the polished floors of Club Solaris, a rhythm that seemed to sync with the heartbeat of the city itself. Gold chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, spilling warm light across velvet booths and mirrored walls. Every corner shimmered with excess diamonds on wrists, champagne bubbling in crystal flutes, laughter too loud to be real. When Seo-Jun Park stepped inside, the room shifted. It wasn't intentional. He didn't raise his voice or command attention. But men who measured their worth in millions and women who adorned themselves in jewels all seemed to sense it, that aura of quiet power. His presence carried weight. The maitre d' hurried forward, bowing deeply. "Mr. Park, your table is prepared." He was led to a private booth positioned perfectly in view of the stage. A glass of Hibiki whiskey appeared almost instantly, sweating in the low light. Minho sat beside him, phone in hand, ever efficient, but his eyes darted nervously toward his boss. Seo-Jun wasn't the type to visit nightclubs. Not anymore. Seo-Jun leaned back, his dark gaze sweeping across the room. Beautiful women in silk gowns, men in custom suits. He had seen this scene 1,000 times in Seoul, Tokyo, and Paris. But there was something different here, an energy beneath the glamour. Something raw. The lights dimmed. The chatter faded. The first notes of music, slow, haunting, like a confession set to rhythm, filled the air. And then she appeared. Aurelia. She stepped into the spotlight in midnight blue sequins that clung to her curves and spilled into a flowing skirt. Her silver mask caught the light, hiding her face but amplifying her mystery. For one heartbeat, the entire club seemed to inhale. Then she moved. Her hips swayed with deliberate grace, arms carving shapes in the air as though she commanded the music itself. She twirled, skirt flaring, a flash of toned legs stealing breath from the men in the front row. The mask glimmered, her eyes smoldered, and every step pulled the audience deeper into her spell. Seo-Jun's glass hovered halfway to his lips, forgotten. He had seen countless performers, ballerinas in Moscow, singers at galas, models parading themselves at exclusive dinners. None of them touched him. None of them pierced through the armor he had built around his heart. But this woman, this masked dancer, something in the way she moved was not for them, not even for him. She danced as though she belonged to no one, as though she was telling a story only she understood. His pulse quickened. His jaw tightened. Minho leaned closer, whispering, "That's Aurelia, sir. Solaris's crown jewel. She never removes the mask in public. No one knows her real name." Seo-Jun didn't answer. He couldn't tear his eyes away. When she spun toward his side of the room, her gaze locked with his for a single, searing second. Silver mask, dark eyes, crimson lips parted slightly with breath. It was nothing more than a glance, but it struck him with the force of a wave crashing against stone. She moved on, the performance continuing, but Seo-Jun sat frozen, something old and aching in him stirring to life. The music reached its crescendo. Aurelia leapt, her body arching in perfect form before landing with grace, head bowed, skirt fanning around her. The crowd erupted with cheers, applause, and shouts of her name. Roses landed at her feet. But Seo-Jun didn't clap. He leaned forward, his whiskey forgotten, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "Find out who she is," he said quietly to Minho. Minho blinked. "Sir, Solaris protects their dancers' identities. It's part of the—" "Then find another way." His voice was calm, but it held the steel that built empires. His eyes never left the stage, where Aurelia had vanished behind velvet curtains. Because Seo-Jun Park, the man who thought he could never feel again, had just found something he didn't yet understand. And he wasn't about to let it go. The applause still echoed faintly in her ears when Alicia slipped into the dressing room. She pulled the sequined bodice from her body, untying the mask with hands that still trembled, not from nerves but from the strange intensity of the man in the booth. She had felt his stare like heat against her skin. Unyielding. Searching. It rattled her in a way no audience ever had. "Another flawless show," murmured Janelle, one of the senior dancers, spritzing perfume on her wrists. "They'd sell their watches just to see you move again, Aurelia." Alicia forced a smile. "It's just the mask. People love a mystery." But she knew it wasn't only the mask tonight. Something about that man, tall, composed, his suit so sharply tailored it looked like it might cut, had unsettled her. His eyes were unreadable, yet when they caught hers, she had felt seen. Too seen. Across the club, Seo-jun sat in silence long after the performance ended. Guests came and went, laughter swirled around him, but he barely noticed. His glass of whiskey remained untouched. "She's extraordinary," Minho said cautiously, breaking the quiet. "But, sir, I think it's better to leave it as it is. These performers build illusions. They're not for men like you." Seo-jun's gaze flicked toward his assistant, cold and precise. "You think I don't know what an illusion is when I see it?" Minho pressed his lips together. He had worked with Seo-jun long enough to recognize that tone. Once his boss set his mind on something, it was like a tide, inevitable. And so began the ritual. Night after night, the black Rolls-Royce pulled up to Solaris. Night after night, Seo-jun took his place in the private booth. And night after night, Aurelia danced. He watched her with the patience of a man used to waiting for empires to rise. He memorized the tilt of her head, the arch of her back, the way she always lingered for half a beat longer in the final pose, as if reluctant to leave the light. The more he saw, the more he wanted to know. Who was she beneath the sequins and silk? What was she hiding behind that mask? And Alicia felt it. On stage, she kept her eyes moving, never lingering on one face too long. But she could not ignore the weight of his presence, the billionaire whose gaze anchored her even in a sea of hundreds. Backstage, she began to hear whispers. "That man in the corner, the one who never claps, he's always watching you," Janelle teased one night, adjusting her earrings. Alicia shrugged, feigning indifference. "Men like that don't look at women like me. They look at fantasies." But her heart betrayed her, beating faster every time she glimpsed him in the dark. She told herself it was dangerous. He was power and money, and she was a woman with two lives, one of which could crumble if exposed. Yet something deep inside, something she tried to silence, thrummed with curiosity. The morning after another performance, Alicia Johnson sat at her desk in the insurance office, her eyes heavy with fatigue. She had been up late scrubbing off glitter, her muscles aching from the dance. Now, beneath the unflattering fluorescent light, she was back to being an ordinary peach blouse, navy trouser, hair pinned neatly away. Her co-workers buzzed with chatter about weekend plans and office gossip, none of which concerned her. Alicia kept her head down, typing reports, sipping black coffee that did little to mask her exhaustion. By 11, Mr. Green asked her to deliver contracts to their partners at the new resort project. She took the neatly bound folder, grateful for a task that meant leaving the stale office air. She hailed a taxi and headed toward the glittering glass tower rising near Paradise Island Park Global Resort's newest Bahamian jewel. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass, sunlight spilling in through high windows. Water trickled from a fountain designed to look like falling shells. Guests in linen suits and sundresses strolled past, sipping cocktails at 10 in the morning. Alicia adjusted her blouse, feeling small among the grandeur. She approached the reception desk. "Delivery for the business office," she said softly. The receptionist nodded. "Please, wait a moment. Someone will escort you." As she stood there, clutching the contracts, a tall man entered through the revolving glass doors. His presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. Staff straightened, voices hushed. Seo-jun Park. He wore a charcoal gray suit that seemed cut from the fabric of authority itself. His dark hair swept neatly back, his gaze sharp and unreadable. To the casual eye, he was simply a powerful businessman inspecting his property. But to Alicia, it was worse. She knew those eyes. She had felt them burning into her the night before, from behind the blinding stage lights. Her heart stumbled. Not here. Not now. He can't see me. He won't recognize me. And he didn't. Seo-jun's eyes slid past her without pause, not a flicker of recognition. To him, she was just another employee in an office blouse. He moved toward the elevators, but as he passed, a faint trace of cologne, clean, woodsy, intoxicating, reached her. It pulled at something deep inside, a memory of spotlights and silence. The receptionist cleared her throat. "Miss, Mr. Green's contact is ready to meet you upstairs." Alicia nodded, tearing her gaze away from the retreating figure. She stepped into the elevator, clutching the folder tight, her pulse still racing. The doors slid shut, and for the first time, she realized what true danger her double life carried. Because the man who haunted her stage had just brushed past her in daylight and he didn't even know it. Not yet. The week unfolded in the usual rhythm of reports, deadlines, and too many cups of coffee. Yet for Alicia, nothing felt the same. Every night she danced beneath the silver mask, every day she returned to her desk, trying to quiet the thrum of adrenaline that lingered after seeing him at the resort. He didn't recognize me. He couldn't have. To him, I'm nobody. But the truth gnawed at her. If fate could place him in her office world once, it could do it again. Seo-jun sat in the top-floor suite of Park Global Resorts, staring out at the turquoise horizon. The island glittered below, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The dancer, Aurelia. No matter how many meetings he endured, how many documents he signed, her image stalked him. He could see her eyes, shining behind the mask, the arc of her body as it moved with the music. He had traveled the world and seen everything luxury could offer, yet nothing had unsettled him like one masked woman. 2 days later, Alicia was sent back to the resort offices, this time to sit through a short contract review. She entered the sleek conference room, setting her notes neatly on the table, keeping her head low. The door opened, and in walked Seo-jun. Her breath caught. He was flanked by Minho and 2 local executives, his presence as commanding as if the air itself made room for him. His eyes swept across the room, registering faces quickly until they landed on hers. He took his seat at the head of the table, but his gaze returned to her more than once as the meeting began. Alicia kept her answers clipped and professional whenever a question was directed her way, but she could feel the weight of his attention. At one point their eyes met. Just a second. Just enough. And in that second, something dangerous sparked. When the meeting ended, everyone rose, gathering papers and exchanging handshakes. Alicia turned to leave quickly, but Seo-jun's voice stopped her. "What is your name?" She froze. Slowly, she turned back, the folder pressed against her chest. "Alicia Johnson, sir." His gaze lingered, measuring her as though she were more than just another staff member. "You work with the insurance firm?" "Yes." Her voice was steady, though her palms were damp. A faint smile ghosted across his lips, rare, fleeting, but devastating. "Efficient work today." And with that, he turned and strode out, leaving her rooted in place, her heart slamming against her ribs. Back in his car, Seo-jun leaned back in the leather seat, eyes half closed. "Sir?" Minho asked cautiously. "Something on your mind?" Seo-jun didn't answer at first. He was thinking of 2 women, the mysterious Aurelia who danced like fire, and the quiet, composed Alicia Johnson who seemed to carry secrets in her silence. But for the first time in years, he felt the pull of curiosity strong enough to chase. The days that followed were a blur of caution for Alicia. Every time her phone buzzed with an office request, she feared it would send her back to the resort. Every time she passed a tall man in a gray suit on Bay Street, her heart raced until she realized it wasn't him. She couldn't risk exposure. Not when her entire life balanced on the fragile secrecy of 2 identities. And yet she couldn't shake the memory of his voice. Real estate. His days were usually consumed with numbers, strategy, and the steady grind of growth. But now he found himself replaying small details. The next week, Alicia was summoned again to the resort for a follow-up. She arrived early, hoping to slip in and out unnoticed. Instead, she was led to a smaller meeting room, intimate, sunlit, with a view of the glittering harbor. And there he was. Alone. Seo-jun closed the file in front of him and looked up. "Miss Johnson." Her pulse tripped. "Mr. Park," she said politely, setting her folder down. "I asked for you specifically," he said almost casually. Alicia blinked. "Me, sir?" "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unreadable gaze. "Your reports are concise. I prefer working with people who don't waste my time." Her throat tightened. This wasn't a compliment. It was a reason thin, but just enough to explain why she was here. And yet, under his scrutiny, she felt as if he already saw beyond the surface. They spent the next half-hour reviewing terms, her pen scratching notes in the margin, his questions sharp and precise. But somewhere between clauses and signatures, the air shifted. Their hands brushed once as she passed him a page. His fingers were cool, deliberate, but her skin burned from the contact. A flicker of silence lingered before they both moved on. When the session ended, Alicia packed her things quickly. She could feel her office mask this time slipping. As she turned to go, his voice stopped her again. "Do you always walk with your head down?" She froze, then looked up, meeting his eyes. For a moment, neither moved. Find out what happens in their relationship in the next episode, which is coming up soon, by clicking on the notification icon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also tell us the country you are watching us from in the comments section so that we will make a story for you.